world is evolving at a faster pace than ever before. As we begin the path to recovery after worldwide disruption, this podcast explores how the design industry can adapt to changing expectations and create a better future for your businesses and consumers. I'm your host, Petah Marian, and you're listening to Create Tomorrow, the WGSN podcast. January tends to be the time of the year when many of us pull our gym kit out of the back of our cupboards, sign up to Dry January, Veganuary, commit to daily meditation, and generally set goals to become the best versions of ourselves for the coming year. We're not going to suggest that you do any of that this year. Life is tough enough, and for getting through last year and this, we should be rewarding ourselves rather than denying. Eat the cake, watch the box set, if that's what makes you happy. But the wellness sector is worth $4.5 trillion a year and has been growing at 6.4% annually, twice the rate of global economic growth. Outside of the pressure to perfect, healthy eating, exercise, meditation, and otherwise taking good care of ourselves is a great thing. It has the capacity to make us feel good, improving our overall sense of physical well-being and mental resilience, things we all need more of in these challenging times. To discuss how wellness is undergoing something of a detox to become more democratic and why we need to start talking about it as well-being, I am, as always, joined by some of my wonderful colleagues. From the food and drink team, we have strategist Claire Lancaster. Hi Claire, how are you?
Hi Petah, I'm well, thanks.
From Lifestyle and Interiors, we have Harriet Kilikita, a strategist focusing on lifestyle.
Hi Petah.
And last but definitely not least, we have Teresa Yee, who is a senior strategist on the beauty team and the office's fitness queen. Hi Teresa, how are you?
Hi Petah, I'm good, thank you.
And so to kick off this episode, I wanted to ask everyone, what does it mean to be well, and what should the wellness industry be looking at for 2021? Claire, do you want to kick off?
So I think for the food and drink industry, health and wellness is going to be understood a lot more holistically in a way that addresses physical and mental health, and the link between those things and the food and drink that we consume.
Fantastic. And are there any specific ingredients that are really emerging in that space that bring together those links between those two ideas?
Yeah, so given the coronavirus pandemic, we think that people are going to be looking for food and drink that offers a lot more wellness in terms of stress and sleep support, as well as greater immunity, and personalization is going to be really important. The lines are really blurring between the supplements and the grocery aisle, and we just think that trend is really set to accelerate.
And Harriet, what are you seeing around wellness for 2021 from the lifestyle and interior sector?
Yeah, I think as Claire was saying about with food and drink, definitely the blend between physical and mental well-being is something that we're seeing more of. So people have been getting into exercise, not for the kind of losing weight or becoming ultra fit, but it's more about a little boost for your well-being, mental and physical. And kind of adopting that into your everyday routines as well, I think, is something that people have seen has helped them kind of deal with the recent pandemic as well. So providing a bit of structure.
Structure, that's a really interesting one. And I think that's something we'll come back to a little bit more later in the episode. And Teresa, what are you seeing in the beauty space? What is the wellness and well-being narrative that we should be thinking about for 2021?
So the pandemic has amplified people's health and wellness priorities, and being well in 2021 now focuses on more of a holistic inner and outer beauty approach. Beauty consumers want to look well on virtual conference calls with glowy, sort of radiance and shiny hair, but they also want to stay healthy and feel good both mentally and physically, which is even more important now. And physical well-being has also shifted, and as Harriet said, it's moving away from wanting to lose weight to focusing more on a strong, healthy body. And people are exercising for more reasons beyond physical gains, but exercising for the mind as well. For example, many of my friends and people I know have taken up running during the lockdown, and it's helping them to clear their minds. And I've also taken that approach to my running and training as well. Obviously, with marathons being cancelled, I'm no longer chasing a PB, a personal best, or trying to get the fastest 5K or 10K like I usually do. But I've really found that running for me depends on how I'm feeling that day and how it makes me feel afterwards mentally.
And I think that that's a really beautiful sentiment, and it's something that I think we'll all be keeping coming back to across the course of this episode, which is that idea of feeling. But I mean, the wellness industry as a whole, you know, when we think about the trajectory of it, the first sort of phase of wellness was very much around that idea of a green smoothie, a yoga bunny, you know, that sort of really kind of heightened aesthetic around, you know, also around, you know, self-actualization and that idea that you could meditate yourself to perfection. And that's really started to become, I guess, quite toxic in terms of as a narrative for wellness and well-being. So how do we look at detoxing the wellness sector, particularly as there's so much pseudoscience out there at the moment?
Yeah, so I think, as you say, Petah, there's a huge opportunity for food and drink brands right now, especially around immunity and health and wellness. But what we're really saying is that brands need to be extremely careful about the claims that they're stating, and they need to be really clear with the science. So they need to signpost that sort of functionality legitimately and be really clear with customers. And they need to work with regulatory agencies in whatever country that they're operating in about the claims that are allowed. So yeah, we just think that products with regulatory credentials are really going to stand out in a sea of ingredients that are claiming to do something. But at the end of the day, the focus for us is really that a healthy diet with fruit and vegetables and that's really balanced is the most important thing, and that's key to a functioning immune system. So while there are these specially targeted ingredients that can support certain elements of immune function, you know, we should really just not make a hero out of just one.
And I think that's a really fantastic way of thinking about that, because obviously, you know, not necessarily focusing on things like superfoods and other things that have necessarily like regulatory claims and things like that, it makes it much more accessible to much more people. And as we're moving through this period of recession and pandemic, there's a lot of people that don't necessarily have that same amount of money, but are very, very concerned with their well-being. So that idea of a much more well-rounded diet is really kind of aligning with those sorts of narratives of just being accessible and available to everybody. But from like a L&I perspective, what are some of the things that you're seeing around this sort of idea of detoxing the wellness sector?
I think in lifestyle and in the home, we're seeing, as you were saying, Petah, a kind of more accessible approach. So whether that's buying kind of lower cost workout equipment that can be used in lots of different ways, like mats or resistance bands and things like that, or whether that's just really simple everyday activities like a 5-minute meditation on a free app. It's sort of looking at the more easily accessible options for wellness that people can easily do, and it doesn't involve a lot of time or a lot of money. And I think this is something we're going to see more of, because people have obviously got a taste now for that kind of at-home workout and at-home wellness routines, and they've seen that they can actually fit it in a lot easier to their daily routines. So I think that's definitely something we're going to see growing going forward as well.
And what about for beauty?
I think what's important now is trust. People want to buy brands and products that they can trust, that's authentic, honest, transparent. And we've seen this before the pandemic, but it's just really has been accelerated. And what we've seen is more derma beauty or sort of doctor-backed brands becoming more sought after, because people want products that are backed by professional expert and proven with scientific research and clinical evidence. Consumers no longer want that product that is just gimmicky or Instagrammable, but it has to really deliver on that sort of performance and function, and also accessibility as well. There's more products out there that are multifunctional, so you can double them up as a wellness supplement which is a powder that you could also use as a face mask as well.
Sorry, a powder that doubles up as a face mask, like a supplement, is that what you mean? Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's like an edible skincare, basically. So there's a brand that's done a powder that you can mix into your smoothies or porridge, but then you could also mix it with water and use it as a face mask as well. So it's like sort of double sort of function, just making it more accessible without having too many products. So it's like a 2-in-1.
we think about science-backed strategies for well-being, one of the things we often think about is sleep. So what are some of the things that are happening in that space? What are some of the innovations? Claire, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, so struggling to get a good night's sleep it is something that consumers are increasingly struggling with. And they're also becoming aware of the connection between good sleep and the food and drink that we eat, as well as that connection to your overall wellness, and sleep really being important and foundational to your overall well-being. We see this really driving demand for functional food and drink products that are really specifically formulated to answer that need. So I think in the West, the tendency towards things like supplements and tinctures and these sort of pharmaceutical-led solutions to getting better sleep have been the sort of go-to solution. But increasingly, we're seeing real food and drink gaining momentum among people who want those sort of natural solutions that fit more into their lifestyles, and they skip those negative after effects of just being, completely knocked out. So we're looking at things like adaptogens and Ayurvedic ingredients, botanicals and nootropics, as well as real foods like melatonin-rich tart cherries and things like that that can be leveraged in products that are sort of fitting into your lifestyle, like late night snacks and little things that you eat just before bed. So we've seen a food called Good Night Food, which is a little chocolate that has L-theanine and magnesium and casein protein in it. So it's just a little chocolate that you eat before bed. They've really focused on a sugar-free formula that has these natural solutions that it serves as, a treat as part of your lifestyle. It's not going into the medicine cabinet and having something completely separate from how you live.
And one of the things when we've talked about this in the past is that I really find quite fascinating is this idea of how some of these things are packaged, because some of the drinks and beverages and the chocolates that you're talking about are really packaged in a way that makes them very aspirational, and they almost look like, the drinks look like cocktails and the chocolates look like something you get on your bed in a hotel. And it's just so much more, it's a really premium narrative. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, the thing that's so great about food and drink, I think, is that there's not very many new ingredients that we discover, but it's up to the creativity of chefs and culinary professionals to really put these ingredients into new formulations and introduce them or reintroduce them to new audiences. And I think that's what we're seeing with these sleep solutions, is that we're actually looking at, these sort of quite ancient forest botanicals or solutions that are actually being put together in a way that is really interesting and really approachable. And while they do look quite premium, as you say, I think that brands need to be quite aware, and we are seeing them be quite aware, as making these things accessible across price points. Because, good sleep is something that, everybody across all spectrums are going to be really interested in getting.
Absolutely. And Harriet, what are you seeing from the lifestyle perspective?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a big focus on the bedroom as like a really key space that people are really investing in. So people are kind of taking one of two different routes to sleep, I think, which is the more kind of tech-enabled way. So sleep tracking and sort of smart bedding and things like that kind of tap into that quantifying health trend that we've been talking about for a while. But then on the other hand, we have that more sort of holistic kind of natural approach, which is more based in kind of creating a cocooning space, putting a nice candle on, and sort of creating a really calming bedtime routine. So I think consumers are kind of falling into one of two camps for the sleep routines. But yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of investment in that kind of bedtime routine idea, building a nice calming kind of wind down period in before bedtime.
I mean, one of those products that's been seeing huge uplifts through the pandemic is really around luxury bed linen and things in that space. So it really is creating that sense of a cocoon. I did read something, though, in the New York Times, I think it was a couple of days ago, which is really around people who are starting to work from their beds, which is obviously something that every sleep expert always seems to say is like the worst thing in the world that you can possibly do. From a beauty perspective, what are we seeing? What are some of the emergent innovations around sleep at the moment?
as Harriet has said, in beauty, we're also seeing more focus on pre-sleep beauty rituals and products emerging in this space. So consumers are putting a greater focus on rest and relaxation, and we're seeing a lot of new sleep aid beauty products that help to calm the mind, and also use aromatherapy and functional fragrances to help people switch off and get a good night's sleep. So beauty has always been about night skincare products that help to rejuvenate the skin. But now people know that getting a good night's sleep is helping to support a good immune system and also mental health. So Elemis has a quiet mind temple balm that's formulated to calm overworked minds that you can apply to your temples or pulse points before you go to sleep. And Colab has just launched an overnight renew dry shampoo that you can spray onto your hair in the evening and leave on overnight, and it contains soothing ingredients such as lavender and amber to help with sleep and relaxation. So we're definitely seeing lots of pre-sleep rituals emerging to help consumers sleep better.
We've seen some huge shifts in the past year, particularly around inclusivity. And obviously, the first wave of wellness has been kind of rightfully criticized for being appropriating a lot of different things from different people's cultures. You know, the first wave of wellness was very much focused on a very specific archetype. It was a skinny woman doing lots of yoga. She had a very singular aesthetic, and it was very much driven by that. But obviously, as we're moving into this sort of more accessible and democratic phase of wellness, there's lots of different things that are evolving around that to make it more accessible to different groups, and also around decolonization and making sure that certain practices and their cultural and spiritual roots are being recognized and treated with the respect that they deserve. And so I was just wondering, what sort of things are you starting to see in this space from your various sectors? Claire, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, Petah, I think it's a great point, and I think it's a really important one for a lot of this sort of social shifts that we're seeing around the world at the moment. So for food and drink, what's fundamental to all of that you're saying is we're seeing brands really push to be more honest about what they're putting into food and how and who is creating those products. And this is about the producers and the makers and the servers and the product packaging. You know, so it's a multifaceted approach, and there's so much to be done, but I think that brands really are moving quite quickly. But I think that eating well and creating a better food system for everyone is such a foundational part of wellness. And we're really we're seeing brands really embrace that movement towards creating more transparency and things that are understanding the concept of wellness, less about the individual and more about the planet and the entire system that we're working within. And you mentioned about decolonization being a huge social movement that we're seeing right now. So there is undeniably this sort of global power shift that's seeing really local communities assume a much greater role and importance in society. And that's definitely, been accelerated by the coronavirus pandemic. I think people are increasingly aware of their local area. And those decolonial narratives are really challenging that sort of perceived universality of, what good is, and where and who gets to arbitrate that. So I think that we're really seeing marginalized voices being heard a lot more. And that's ultimately just leading to this more fuller, more culturally creative, diverse era of makers and producers and people who feel empowered to celebrate their roots and share those roots with other people.
And in that, I think one of the things that you've said, and it's something that we've been writing about a lot on Insight, is this redefinition of what it means to be well. That idea of, wellness doesn't happen on your own, and wellness is a communal act. And so, that idea, particularly through the pandemic that we saw, where, you started to realize that people, a social net and sick pay and things like that contribute to a well society, because you just can't be well on your own when there's this huge, scary virus that's kind of chasing everybody around. But to go back to this idea of making wellness more inclusive, Harriet, can you talk a little bit to how this is happening in the lifestyle space?
I think it's been really interesting during the pandemic because people, as you say, have kind of learnt that they all need to sort of rely on each other a lot more and work together, I think, to kind of stay well, whether that's dropping food around a neighbour's house or, you know, meeting up for when walks are allowed, meeting up for a walk in your local area. Everyone's been living a lot more locally because of restrictions. So I think people have kind of been maybe finding out and discovering things in their local neighbourhood that they maybe never even knew about before. And I think part of that has been this sort of sense of community that has come back up. And in kind of more of a formal way, we kind of have seen before, obviously the pandemic has put a lot of real life spaces on hold at the moment and sort of meetups, but there are spaces and communities emerging for groups that may have been underrepresented in wellness before, so groups for people of colour or women of colour specifically, LGBTQ plus groups for wellness, or even apps that allow that kind of online interaction and support. So there are these targeted and tailored approaches as well to community care and support, which I think is going to continue to be more and more important. And kind of taps into as well the kind of more personalised elements of wellness as well. So it's not just about making wellness that's inclusive or open to everyone, but it's actually tailored and specifically designed to work for a specific group of people, which I think we will see more of going forward as well.
So one of the things that keeps coming up again and again when we're thinking about the things and the tools that create a sense of well-being and stability is control and routine. So can we talk a little bit more about what that's looking like for 2021 in terms of some of the routines and things that people are starting to pick up?
So in beauty, many people are using their sort of everyday beauty routines as anchors during the lockdown, and it's given them back this sense of control, structure in their lives. So in our SS 2022 beauty forecast, we're calling this rituals, not routines, and focusing on intentional self-care rituals that celebrate the joys of beauty, from mixing your own sort of masks, using bowls and spatulas, to taking the time to enjoy your morning or evening skincare cleansing routines. And as I mentioned earlier, people are spending more time at home, from working to working out, and people are seeking these new beauty rituals at home, which we have called twilight beauty rituals. And it helps them to mentally, physically switch off and also unwind from work to rest, day to night. And so it's all about cleansing the skin using tools and products that focus on luxurious textures and materials that make you feel good. And this is becoming even more important as people are working from home, whereas before you could use your commuting time from the office to the home to switch off. But now people are using the bathroom time to help them escape from their living space, which is also their working space. And so their beauty routines have become this sort of act of joy, happiness and escapism.
And what are you seeing for lifestyle, Harriet?
I think what's been really interesting is there's been quite a lot of crossover between kind of organisation and wellness. So that kind of routine creating has been really important. And as Teresa said, it's really an anchor for people in their day where time no longer seems to exist anymore. So things like apps and journals that help people create that sense of structure, because there have been such blurring lines between all of the elements of life being all at home, have been really important, and creating that kind of work-life balance. And I also think that it's been about keeping that really simple and people being able to really easily incorporate little parts of their day that bring them a little bit of joy, and give them a bit of rest and a break from the daily grind. So I think that'll be really important going forward as well.
Yeah, and I think for food and drink, the idea of routine is something that has either been, cooking has either become a cause for celebration, and people have had more time to really experiment and find all of these new recipes and try new things, and home cooking has just absolutely exploded. And then for other people, you know, and I really love food, but also the idea of cooking myself 3 meals a day every day throughout this entire lockdown has become quite taxing. So, you know, as Harriet said, we're also seeing a rise in products that, you know, make these daily routines, trying to flip the idea from something that's a grind to something that's simple and easy and accessible, while also maintaining a lot of those consumer concerns that we're seeing around, you know, sustainability and wellness. So, you know, we're no longer conflating something like ease with something like low quality.
Also in beauty, Claire was talking about sort of everyday sort of routines, but like simple everyday beauty rituals such as bathing and showering has also become elevated beyond just cleansing the body for hygiene, but also providing this therapeutic experience to combat stress, anxiety, and also help to calm the mind. And there's lots of brands that I've seen that have started doing this. One of my favourites is Wild Sauce Apothecary. So they take this mindful approach to beauty with ritual kits that pair skincare products with sort of meditation and breath work. So it's really tapping into the mind and body and helping the consumer to sort of transition between sort of that work and rest mode.
And I think those demarcations of work and different sort of aspects of the life become increasingly important from a wellness perspective and a well-being perspective, particularly when we're spending all of our time at home. But as we come to the end of this episode, I'm going to ask you the question I ask all of the guests, which is, what is the one short-term and one long-term thing that businesses should be doing to tap into the shifts that we're seeing take place around well-being at the moment? Harriet, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think in the short term, obviously there's been this massive shift to home. So I think anything that is designed to make being well at home easier is a great easy win at the moment, whether that's affordable workout kits or apps that make daily meditation easier, or even just a journal that helps you to schedule your day. All of those things are really important at the moment. In the longer term, I think it is taking this really simple, easy, actionable approach further. So it's really looking at how to make wellness more accessible for more people. How can it create a sense of community for people that means that more people feel involved and feel that they have access to wellness. And I think that would be a really great long-term goal for brands as well.
And what about for you, Claire?
Yeah, so for food and drink, I think in the short term, given the coronavirus pandemic, people really are seeking immediate solutions for things, as we've said, for stress, sleep support, immunity, and, you know, greater personalization. And so I think the short-term goal for brands should be really focusing on signposting functionality legitimately and hoping to build that trust as part of a long-term solution. And, you know, anything with great regulatory credentials is absolutely going to stand out. But then I think for the longer term, just brands encouraging and going along with the consumer awareness that health and wellness is something that is really holistic. It's part of a whole diet system. It's part of a whole food system that, you know, really seriously needs to be considered, and in a way that addresses both physical and mental health. And as we've said, that link between your holistic wellness and the food and drink that you consume.
And lastly, Teresa, what about you?
So with continued home working and beauty, brands should help consumers to switch off in the home with mood-boosting products that alleviate stress with functional fragrances and sensorial textures. And beauty will also take on a more active role in supporting health, from immunity support to sleep and mental health. So in the long term, think about investing in neutral cosmetics and make it part of the beauty ritual, as consumers will adopt this inner and outer beauty approach. And it's creating products that target the gut, brain, skin axes, so pairing adaptogens with probiotics and psychodermatology as consumers look for this sort of more proactive support for their mental and physical and skin health.
And that's all we have time for today. Thanks for listening to the WGSN podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, then please subscribe to us. You can find us on all major podcast platforms. And if you really like what you heard, then please leave us a rating and review. It really does help us to get the word out there. Carla will be back in the hot seat for our next episode. But in the interim, if you want to learn more about what we've been talking about today, then please head over to WGSN.com to find out how you can get access to much more insight and analysis. And if you're already a WGSN subscriber, head over to the site where we've pulled together some of our research on the future of wellbeing with key points from this podcast in one handy report. Thanks to our guests for being here, and I'd like to thank our show producers, Roland Bodenham and Bethan Ryder. And again, thank you for being here. Please stay well and healthy, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.